think I've seen in this field. Let's go back a little bit. Let's go back to 1975 when this occurred to you. And how many of your friends were with you too at the time?
Well, there were 7 of us all together, and we were just coming home from a day's work. It was starting to get dark when we saw this object hovering near the road. And I just impulsively got out and went up to get a closer look. Steve and Alan insist that it looks to them like I was under some kind of control, like I was in a trance, but I was really just transfixed by the awe and grandeur of what I was seeing.
Yeah, you were curious about it, so you went, you jumped out the truck, you went looking out there. The movie depicts you standing in the middle of almost like a flat area, and the beam hits you. Is that what happened?
Yeah, that was pretty close, except for, in the movie, it's like this light comes on and just kind of picks the actor up and throws him back. But it was much more violent than that. Steve's insisting now that, that it threw me 20 feet, not 10 feet. But they were convinced that it killed me because the way my body landed without, protecting myself from the fall. And so they just knew that they were next,
And they left you there?
Yeah, they were afraid that, it was going to kill them. So, anybody fault with them for, fleeing, have to understand that, why should they risk their lives to save somebody they think's already dead?
Yeah. Did you ever get upset with them, Travis, because they left you?
No, I didn't. But my family came down on them, and so, there was a little bit of friction between me and Mike and maybe some of the other guys that, that I was blaming them, but I never did. And I have to say that they displayed a lot of courage in coming back right after that to try to rescue me.
The story while you were gone was, they're saying this is what happened to you, they don't know where you are. The police department in law enforcement, they didn't believe them, did they?
No, and all throughout the search, the lawmen separated the men out, and each guy had an officer with him that just pushed them throughout the 4 or 5 days of the search. Come on, tell us what really happened. There was maybe it was an accident. Just fess up. You killed him, and we can all go home.
That's right. Which one of you killed him? Just tell us, and let's get this done. But nobody corrected. And then, weren't there a couple polygraph tests there too, Travis?
Yeah, the sheriff brought in the state police polygraph examiner and tested the men, and when they passed, it was moving on to other ways to try to explain it away. And so that's been kind of my battle all these years, to try to, document and refute all these charges and attempts to explain it away, and I think I've done so, and according to a lot of observers, pretty thoroughly.
I think you have too. Absolutely. At this point in your life, here we are a number of years later since this episode. It's a focal point for your life. We've met before, you've been on the show a number of times. Are you glad it happened to you, or do you wish it never did?
Well, I still have to say I wish it never did. In order to cope with anything, you have to try to find the good in it if you can. And I've done that to a certain extent, but still, I'd rather it never happened.
Any nightmares associated with this anymore?
Oh, they were really intense right afterwards, but not so much anymore. People who hear me sleeping, hear me fighting in my sleep, but when I wake up, I don't remember the dreams anymore, so, it could have been anything. So I really don't know if I'm having those kind of traumatic nightmares anymore.
Are you still remembered now as the person who was abducted?
Yeah, it comes to find me, regrettably, but that's just...
it is what it is.
Yeah, what it is. So I have to, go with what happened.
Kim McCusborough has claimed that she thinks there's indeed an alien hybrid program going on. She thinks that they're going to intermix them with us. I'm not so sure, but the program nonetheless is something's happening. What's your take on all of this, Travis?
Well, I think that my particular experience was a little different, and I've gone along with the term abduction, but, in more recent years, I've thinking that maybe it wasn't really all that intended to start with. That the being hitting me was some kind of an accident, and that it possibly killed me, or at least, put me in the cardiac arrest. And so what they were actually doing was trying to rescue me. In other words, rather than abduction, I'd say more of an ambulance call.
That's interesting. Why do you think they came?
Who knows, you know?
Yeah.
Why there? Some people say, oh, they had to be laying for you, you know? They targeted you and they were after you, but I don't know, you know? They could have been they were having car trouble or something.
And there they were. Hey, ironically, I'm in Albuquerque. Tomorrow, you're signing the new edition of Fire in the Sky on Saturday, are you not?
Yeah, on the 10th at Page One Books.
Super.
Kind of a coincidence you're going there.
We're being drawn by a force, Travis. You never know.
Yeah.
The guys that were with you then, everybody scattered now? Is everybody all over the country, or where are they?
Well, yeah, you know, and for years, Steve, the youngest guy on the crew, didn't want to talk about it, and he just stayed out of sight. But he popped up here a couple of years ago, and I'm going to be speaking with him in Huntington Beach here pretty quick on the 29th, I think it is. So it'll be his first outing after all this time, and that's kind of interesting to, you know, to reconnect with him. I was on the Today Show with John Galeb, another crew member, in February, and you know, not having talked to them all these years, it's kind of interesting to hear a lot about, you know, their take on it, because they were there during, obviously, time when I wasn't, and so.
What has happened to their lives since this episode? I mean, we know how this has affected you over the years. How about them? I mean, were they able to, you know, mix back into society and carry on, or did they have problems because of this?
Well, I'm sure there was a few, especially if, you know, until they left the area, but I think in many respects it was easier for them to blend in. John's story of being there and having this guy describe how his claim that he was there, he was on the crew and everything, and of course John was actually on the crew, and he knows this isn't true, but he never said anything and just let the story go.
Travis, what about scientists or anybody, military, anybody trying to find out exactly what happened to you?
Well, there has been some follow-up research with the phenomenal growth of the trees nearest where the crash descended, but as far as official government, you know, there's been some harassment, and I heard from Mike recently that they're still at it with him for some reason. Some people who actually identify themselves with federal identification and stuff.
And what do you mean by that? Is there something to do with the trees? What does that mean?
Well, where the crash came down, the trees nearest there exhibited a phenomenal increase in growth. And with the tree ring samples that were taken, you can count back the number of rings from the time of the incident and see that the growth suddenly split to where they were producing 36 times the quantity of wood fiber that they had in the preceding 85 years.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And just in a certain area.
Yeah, just right in a circle around where the craft came down, and it dissipates in the surrounding area.
Fire in the Sky, the new edition, and of course it was a good read then, and I'm sure it's a great one today, Travis. When you look at the movie Fire in the Sky, what do you think of that?
Well, you know, I think it was a good thing in many ways that it really helped to open people's minds. It was one of the first times, or the first time, that a real-life incident was turned into a theatrical movie. But I've had a tremendous number of emails over the years from people who wish they had stuck closer to the real story. So I'm looking at the remake of the movie. Great. Yeah, you know, anybody who would email me, and you know, I'm going to bring all these emails that I've been getting to the studio and see if we can convince them to retell it.
Well, if I recall, a couple of years ago you told me on the show that the scene in the movie where you woke up in these honeycombs didn't happen like that, if I remember.
No, it didn't.
Yeah.
No, it didn't. There's a few things that I would say were allegorical or symbolic to a certain degree, and communicating things that I felt and experienced, but generally, you know, the whole look of the interior being cluttered and organic rather than sterile and mechanical is just, you know, kind of the opposite of what was happening there.
Do you recollect the extraterrestrials that were involved in this abduction?
Yeah, it was, you know, absolutely. It was, and then, of course, was looking into the eyes of these creatures. It was just